Good afternoon. Welcome to a new episode of the Guru Perspective, and I want to definitely say Happy New Year's to all. We started off on a bad note, unfortunately, with the incident that happened in New Orleans with the man in the pickup truck, and it was a tragedy killing 10 people and 35 being injured. I would like to give my thoughts and my prayers to their families and loved ones, and definitely hated to start the year off like that. I want to put this in a good spirit right now, and I want to give more of a cheerful mood. And I want to talk about some things that happened just recently on January the 1st, and the game that was postponed and was played on January the 2nd today at 4 o'clock. Definitely have to talk about some of my college games, and just wanted to give my intake on what happened in the college football playoff in round two. I want to start off by saying the first game was very good. I was really surprised at how well that game was played. Arizona State let me know that they belong there. But then the crazy part about it is the top ranked teams and every team that was on the bye, they're now all eliminated. You had your Oregon Ducks eliminated, yesterday. And then not only was the Oregon Ducks eliminated, you had Arizona State that was eliminated too as well. And you had a lot of the teams who I thought that was going to advance who definitely didn't advance. Boise State was out now, and there's a lot of teams who I thought that was going to be going to the next round. They didn't advance, but starting off, well, it was a shocker to see that those teams were all eliminated like they were. The first team was Oregon, then Georgia, and then you had Arizona State. It wasn't not one of those top three teams that lasted. And it was just a shocker to me because I thought that it was going to be different. Texas advanced, they won, and it was a really good game. I enjoyed it. It was a really fun game to watch. At first, it didn't look like it was going to be much. It looked like it was going to be a walk-off victory for Texas because at first, ASU, they went down the field, kicked the field goal. And when they went down the football field and kicked that field goal, I said, okay, we might just have us a game. Little did I know it was like two big haymakers, two explosive plays that Texas did, and then they kicked the field goal. When I saw that, I said, man, this game might not be close at all. It was a tale of two tapes because in the second half, it was a different story. Arizona State, and Cam Scatterbo, they basically just went out there and staked their dominance, and they got the game to the point to where it was tied. And then once it went into overtime, in my opinion, I felt like they kind of cheated Arizona State. That's just me. I'm not really trying to down Texas, but I felt like it was a targeting situation when it was a helmet to helmet. He clearly launched with his helmet going up for the tackle. And when that happened, I said, okay, I clearly know that they see that now. And now that it was under review, I know they're going to make the right play now and say it was targeted, give them the first down, and, go on with the game. That didn't materialize. And I was a little upset because everybody seen it. Come on now. You guys got to do better than that. I don't want you on the NFL level and start making really bad decisions. It seemed like you wanted Texas to advance. They still had chances, and I still like they messed up those chances. Arizona State being, but that play was a huge play. That could have let them finish that drive and scored a field goal or a touchdown because when you looked up at the end of the game, the field goal kicker missed the field goal. And when that happened, that would have been the ball game right there. Arizona State scoring and then that happening, but then that was a huge if they didn't go with that play and they let the game move on. Arizona State even scored in the overtime, making the score. They had a touchdown lead. Then it was, of course, Texas' turn. It was a 4th and 13, and they converted on that play. And once they converted on that play, it looked like it took the spirit out of Arizona State. And when they tied the game, they got the ball back in the second overtime. They scored at the blink of an eye. It was so fast, I didn't even recognize that it was the second overtime. And then they went for two and they converted, and that was the ball game because Arizona looked like they had a chance, but one of the defenders went over and got the pick, And that sealed the deal, and that was the ball game. But it was still a really good contested game. I like to give shouts out to ASU and how good they played. They definitely proved that they belong. It was a good game, and Quentin Ewers even was solid that game. He seemed like he wasn't injured, and he seemed like he was definitely much more healthy than what he has been in the past. He had 322 yards and three scores on the day. And one of my favorite players to watch was Matthew Golden in that game. He caught everything. When you needed a big play, that was the man to call. He had 7 receptions, 149 yards, and he had a touchdown. I feel like Sam Levitt had a really good game, average at best. I really felt like he did enough to help them, but it was all about Cam Scatterball in this game. And, Sam Levitt had 222 yards and he had a pick on the day. Scatterbo kept the team on his back, and he definitely carried that team in that second half. He had 30 carries. That's a lot in the playoff game for 143 yards and two scores, and he had 8 receptions for 99 yards. That final score was 39-31, and I still tilt my hat off to Arizona State. I feel bad because I feel like, you're going to definitely have to have the loser in that classic game, but still, I had to give credit where credit was due because you gave Texas life and they took advantage after that 4th and 13 and they didn't move back. They definitely didn't look back after that. I was more surprised with this game right here that I'm about to say. Number one, Oregon going down to Ohio State. It was a really solid game. Well, I can say, Will Howard had the solid game. He had 319 yards and three touchdowns. And what I liked about the game was Travion Henderson. It was only to the point where they were throwing the ball well, but not only that, I felt like they was clicking on all cylinders on the run game. Trevion Henderson had 94 yards and two scores, and the player that I felt like was the player of the game was Jeremiah Smith, the freshman. That dude cannot be stopped. I definitely believe right now he is the best receiver in the game. He had 7 receptions, 187 yards, and two scores. Dylan Gabriel didn't play bad, but didn't play good neither. He had 299 yards and two scores. The thing was, they were down by so much they had to throw the ball. And then run game wasn't really doing anything. I mean, Jordan James was disappointing on the ground, but then that stifling defense from Ohio State neutralized him. He had 7 carries for 14 yards. Trayshawn Holden, on the other hand, the wide receiver from Oregon, he was one of the reasons why they still tried to make a little run at the end. I felt like it was too little too late. When it's 34-8 in the first half, going into halftime, I didn't think they had much to go on. And he had 7 receptions for 116 yards and he had 2 touchdowns. That being said, once he scored the 2 touchdowns. I looked at it and I said they still might have a chance. And it just seems like it was too much time that was on the clock still, but not at all. That Ohio State defense stepped up and they pulled out that victory. Had to give credit to them. I didn't feel like they should have lost the first game, Will. I felt like Will Howard, it was a bad, clock management. And that was the reason why they didn't get that victory. But hearsay, Oregon was undefeated at the time. Everybody who got the buys is out right now, and that's crazy to me to see that too. I'm just really shocked because it's like Georgia's gone, the number 2 ranked team, Oregon the number 1 ranked team, and then you have Boise State. They're gone now after losing to Penn State, which I still felt like that was a really good game. They looked like they belong, but at the end of the day, 27-17, and I just didn't feel like they recovered when they came out. They came out slow, and they never recovered in that game, and Penn State moved on. And which I was surprised about, too, is number 2, Georgia losing. Because I felt like, yeah, you guys didn't have your starting quarterback, but I felt like, Gunner did enough to keep you guys in the game. It was just they made too many mistakes. It just seems like Notre Dame was more the aggressor too. Had to give credit to, Marcus Freeman for having those guys prepared and ready for the game. Kirby Smart. I don't really know what was going on in those guys' head. I guess with Carson Beck not being there, they lost a little bit of confidence. A lot of people already counted them out because Carson Beck wasn't playing. And Garner filled his shoes and he played quite well. It was just a lot of drop passes and miscues on their behalf. And unfortunately, that's why they're at home. That final score from the Ohio State Oregon game was a blowout, 41-21. And I want to talk about the game today. Notre Dame, number 7 ranked Notre Dame versus number 2 Georgia. I didn't really feel like Notre Dame did a lot. He was 15-24 with 90 yards and a touchdown, but I felt like the return, when it was the kickoff return, and when they got that touchdown at the end of the first half that made the game go up 13 the 10, I said, yeah, I don't think that it's going to recover from that. They're going to definitely be hurt after that. But then, just the play when they ran the ball back after the, kickoff, that took the fight out of Georgia. Georgia just seemed like they were stifled on offense. They couldn't really get to Notre Dame on defense. It was a lot of big plays that they gave up. I know they got a lot of injuries on both ends, but it's still no excuse. I feel like Kirby Smart should have prepared them better. To see them lose 23-10, I was shocked because a lot of people felt like they were one of the teams who possibly could have won it all. That final score was 23-10. I want to talk about that Penn State Boise State game a little bit too, because I definitely felt like Boise State belonged. I apologize because I got the score wrong. That final score was 31-14. When they start clicking, it was too little too late. And what I seen they did, Penn State, was a smart effort because what they wanted to do was make Madison, beat them through the air. And that wasn't going to happen. It definitely didn't materialize in that game. He looked really bad at times. And that's why I felt like if you can keep Ashton Genting from scoring, then that's a possible way you can win. I was surprised a lot of people didn't use that recipe. No disrespect. I don't feel like the Mountain West is tough as some of the other teams, like, Penn State and the Big Tens. I don't think they could have dealt with the Northern Dames and some of those teams that they had, like the brutal schedule that they had. Because when I seen this game, I said, this is going to be an interesting game. But I was really surprised that number 3 Boise fell to number 6 Penn State because I don't know why, but I still feel like when you look at Madison, I just didn't think he had it that game. He had 304 yards through the air, a touchdown, but the 3 picks cost them. And they scored, it seemed like, on every pick he threw because Drew Aller didn't do a lot, but he did enough to where he could keep them neutralized. He had 171 yards and 3 scores. The surprise of the day to me was Tyler Warren. He looked really good on the day, too. That guy's phenomenal. He has 6 receptions, 63 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I definitely believe if he come out this year, he's going to be one of the top tight ends in the league, and I feel like it's well deserved. I just didn't really feel like it was a lot of effort from Boise. And, maybe because they're in a Mountain West, everybody felt like they belong and the record and their score and how well they played. But Ashton Genting didn't get in the end zone. And that's what they did. They said, we want, Maddox Madison to beat us. And he couldn't do that, and that's the issue right now with Boise. I feel like maybe another quarterback, maybe it's Ashton Genting, if he would stay, they could make something happen. But I still feel like that's one of the reasons why they don't really look at a lot of the weak teams as far as, and I'm not calling Boise State weak. I mean, their division's weak. The Mountain West is not strong enough, and they don't have enough powerhouse teams like the ACC, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, whatever you want to call it. It's a lot of tough teams, and they have brutal schedules all year. And it seemed like Boise kind of ran through the Mountain West. And that's why, unfortunately, when you see this game, it looked like, yeah, they were supposed to be here. But when you see the score, that's supposed to have been the score. I definitely thought that they would be able to compete with Penn State. But Penn State right now, their coach trying to keep his job, him and Ryan Day. So that's why when I look at these games, I said, okay, I understand they trying to prove a point, and the message was delivered. I want to move on now, and I want to talk about some of the things that happened in the NFL last week. It was some really lackluster games to say. I want to start off with the Christmas games that was on Wednesday. I'm gonna just talk about them briefly. In this game, what's funny is the whole year it seemed like Kansas City offense was asleep, and they just never really got a really good offensive game plan going. Not this game. Patrick Mahomes had 320 yards, three touchdowns. Kareem Hunt had 20 yards and he had a score in the red zone. And this was a game right here for all the fantasy fans out there and the people who play fantasy football. I know they were pretty excited for Travis Kelsey because he had 84 yards and a touchdown finally. He got in the end zone. Russell Wilson didn't look so hot this game. He had 205 yards and he had a pick. Najee Harris had 13 carries and 74 yards, and Patrick Fryermuth had 7 receptions and 60 yards. And basically, that's the way the game went. You know, that final score was 29-10, and it was a really huge blowout victory for Kansas City, and they sealed their fate. They're the number one seed, and now I believe pretty much most of the team is going to rest. They're going to rest their players. They don't have nothing else to prove. They're number one, and they get that bye, get the guys back fresh and clicking on all cylinders. And now the Super Bowl and the playoffs go through Kansas City once again. Will they be able to three-peat? Who knows? With a team who didn't play well all year or kind of play lackluster and not to the excited, explosive team that we're normally used to even be in this situation and being 15-1, that speaks volumes. Moving on to the Baltimore Ravens game, that was definitely going to be brief too as well. Lamar Jackson didn't have to do that much. He had 168 yards, 2 scores. Derrick Henry had 147 yards on the ground, and he looked like a freight train, and he had a touchdown. And Mark Andrews had 2 receptions for 68 yards and a score. That's big volumes right there. On the other hand, CJ Stroud definitely looked like he had that sophomore slump. He had 185 yards and a pick on the day. Joe Mixon was MIA. He was definitely on that milk carton this week. He had 26 yards on 9 carries. Nico Collins didn't do well neither. I know, thank you for that because in my fantasy that helped me out tremendously. He had 3 receptions and 59 yards. But the sad part was the Christmas game was very lackluster, and that final score was 31-2. I will be talking to going into Tuesday. I'm going to have an actual new guru perspective as well. It's going to be at the regular time, Tuesday at 1. And I will be basically talking about a lot of the stats and giving some of the best stats of the year. I want you guys to stay tuned for that one right now. I want to talk about what's going on in the NFL in week 17 and kind of move on to give my predictions for week 18. And that's going to be pretty fast because I'm going to do it in a lightning fashion. On Thursday, the Seattle Seahawks versus Chicago Bears. I'm not going to really get into that one. That game was won by field goals. It was rain, and it was just a really nasty looking game right there. Geno Smith had 160 yards. Caleb Williams had 122 yards and an interception. And like I said, that game was decided by field goals for the most part. It was 3 field goals kicked in the game. It was 2 field goals from the Seattle Seahawks, which had 6, and then Chicago Bears had 3. They had opportunities to try to go down and even try to tie or win the game, but then the clock management seemed like it came back again to show this ugly head with the Chicago Bears. Sad thing is with them, they could have had a victory on Thanksgiving. Thank God they didn't because it was against my Detroit Lions, and that clock management caused their coach to lose his job, Matt Eberflus. And it just seems like that's continuously happening right now in Chicago. Hopefully get somebody who can go in there and help them out on that end. But Lord forbid, don't let it be Ben Johnson. Moving on. These games, this first game was really bad, on Saturday. The New England Patriots versus the Los Angeles Chargers. Justin Herbert had 281 yards and 3 scores in this game. Drake May had 117 yards and a touchdown. And Demario Douglas was the only bright spot in New England, and that was the only touchdown they had. I thought that basically it was garbage points. But J.K. Dobbins is continuing to flourish and look well this season. He's been healthy for the most part. He had a little scare at one point, but he wasn't banged up enough to like have a torn ACL or anything and been out for the season. I don't want to jinx him and even mention that, but he definitely has some bad ups and downs in the NFL. Just congratulations for him to being healthy and being a good team player and just being the player we knew he'd be coming out of Ohio State. So just congratulations on a solid year this year, JK. Lad Conkley, he had 8 receptions, 94 yards, and he had 2 scores as well on the day, and he was definitely unstoppable. McConkley is funny to see that how good him and Brock Bowers are playing right now. I think they were ranked 1 and 2 in receptions and just the rookie scores right now. I think actually Brock Bowers has more yards than he do, maybe more touchdowns. I'm not really quite sure, but the two guys from Georgia, they definitely could have used them today. I want to go on to that Cincinnati Bengals game and the Denver Broncos. That was one of the best games I've seen, period, this weekend. It came up just recently. Bo Nix showed that he possibly could be the rookie of the year, but I just think it was too much from Jaden Daniels to actually try to take that away from him. It's his right now to lose. And after doing what he did to Philadelphia Eagles when they shocked those guys, when he had those 5 touchdowns, I think that sealed the deal for him being the offensive rookie of the year. But Bo Nix definitely didn't back down to the Cincinnati Bengals. He had 219 yards, he had 3 touchdowns, and he had a pick on the day. Marvin Mims looked really great in that game. Marvin Mims, he had 8 receptions for 103 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns. And everything he threw, Bo Nix saying every time he threw the ball in his direction, Marvin Mims made a spectacular play. And it was just a really good game. It was like you could tell they had playoff implications involved in it too. Cincinnati's trying to stay alive. And at the time, I feel like if Denver would have won that game, they would have clinched and they would have been in the playoffs. So that's what I was talking about. That's what the football is all about. And I was glad I was able to see that game in its entirety. And that was one of the better games on the Saturday afternoon slate. Joe Burrow had 412 yards, 3 touchdowns, and T. Higgins had 131 yards and he had 3 scores. They took Jamar Chase out of the game a little bit. He still got 100 yards on the day, but T. Higgins was the big target and he was catching everything in the end zone. So that was a really good game. What I liked about the game is when it went to overtime because Joe Burrow scored on the run play and Chase Brown got injured, so they had to use one of their timeouts, and Denver got to keep their timeout. Denver went down the field, and that was that spectacular play I was talking about when he threw the ball in the end zone, and Marvin Mills caught the ball over 2 defenders, and that's what took them into overtime. But at the end of the day, the Bengals kicker missed the field goal. And that's what caused them to go to overtime. And Joe Burrow said he had to take matters in his own hand. And that's what T. Higgins sealed the deal. And that final score was 30-24, Cincinnati Bengals. The other game wasn't really all that good as well. It was more or less like I feel like Kyron Williams carried the team on his back in this game, but it was just a really sluggish game to watch, too. I'd rather just watch that one game with the Broncos and the Bengals, and I'd have been satisfied with that. This game, too, it was a touchdown at least scored. And Kyron Williams had 13 carries for 56 yards, and he had a touchdown on the day. And Kyler Murray threw for 321 yards, a touchdown, and he had 2 picks. Matthew Stafford had 181 yards through the air, and that was it. And Trey McBride looked really good, too, in the game. He's one of the better tight ends right now, the up-and-coming young tight ends with 12 receptions, 123 yards, and he had a score as well. But that final score was 13-9. And the game was really defensive minded. To me, it was really good defense. It was some plays that they left out there on the field, but it was still an okay game to watch. But I just felt like most of this weekend was kind of stagnant. It wasn't as interesting because, you know, I feel like right now people are going to start resting players week 18, and a lot of these games didn't really have too much meaning. The only thing it was basically doing is putting perspective on the draft orders. I want to move to the Sunday slate games. I want to talk about the Jets and the Buffalo Bills. The crazy thing was, it just looked like Josh Allen didn't put in a lot of effort this game. Didn't really have to. He had 182 yards and he had two touchdowns on the day. And James Cook looked okay. He had 53 yards in the score. And Terrell Shavers, not really a huge household name. He had a reception for 69 yards and he had a score too. Just let you know how they felt about the New York Jets. And the funny thing is, Aaron Rodgers had 112 yards and two interceptions on the day. Garrett Wilson had 66 yards on seven receptions and a touchdown. And the funny thing was, once they finally benched Aaron Rodgers and put Tyrod Taylor in, that's how the two scores ended up being on the board, because it would have probably been worse than that if Aaron Rodgers continued to play that game. But that 40-14 was a laugher, and I think it's going to be a lot of changes in New York. Moving on, I want to talk about the Tennessee Titans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's what I was saying too. People claiming their stake and trying to get themselves together in draft order. Mason Rudolph had 193 yards, a touchdown, and a pick on the day. And Matt Jones had 174 yards and he had two scores. The rookie sensation was looking really good too. Brian Thompson Jr. He had seven receptions for 91 yards and he had the score on the day. And that final score was 20-13 and like a sluggish game. It was like nobody wanted to win the game, but somebody had to win. And that ended up being the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Panthers in Carolina game, it was just bad. Carolina Panthers, no disrespect. At least they tried and they put in an effort, but they wasn't in the league with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield had 359 yards and five touchdowns. Bucky Irvin had 20 carries for 113 yards. He was running wild all over Carolina's defense. And Mike Evans had eight receptions, 97 yards, and he had two scores on the game. Bryce Young had 203 yards through the air and two touchdowns. And Adam Thielen was the recipient of them with five receptions, 110 yards, and he had two scores. But the 48-14 laugher, that was a game I definitely wasn't really looking into. It didn't really care about. The Raiders and the Saints was another game that I didn't really too much care about looking into, but at the same time, I respect it because it was for the order of the draft and just the no quit attitude in Antonio Pierce. I know how bad this season has been, but I wanted to keep my eye out to see if those guys had their heads down or just felt like they gave up on the season and they didn't. What I liked about the game was Aiden O'Connell looked pretty sharp. He had 242 yards and he had two touchdowns on the day. Amir Abdullah even did a little damage with 20 carries and 115 yards. Brock Bowers had seven receptions for 77 yards, but he didn't get in the end zone this week. Spencer Rattler had 218 yards, a touchdown, and two interceptions, and that final score was 25-10. Um, just wanted to give shouts out to Antonio Pierce, man. I definitely hope he can keep his job, but right now it's looking more likely they're going to go in another direction. But the Raiders are definitely going out swinging. They didn't give up on the season, and they kept their heads up high through everything they've been through. I would like to give credit to them in that organization. I want to go ahead and I want to talk about the Cowboys and the Eagles. It's going to be pretty brief. The crazy part about it is Kenny Pickett looked really sharp in that game. He had 143 yards and a touchdown before he got injured. And then the rookie quarterback came in, their third string quarterback, and threw two touchdowns. So that just speaks volumes and let you know that the Eagles were way superior when it came to the Dallas Cowboys. Cooper Rush had 147 yards, a touchdown, and two picks. And Rico Dowdle had 104 yards on the day. Saquon Barkley had 31 carries for 167 yards, and he was 101 yards away from breaking the record, of Eric Dickerson. Right now, I definitely feel like week 18, they're going to probably rest their players. They don't really got nothing to really fight for right now. if I'm not mistaken, I believe that they will be the number 2 seed. And right now, they're going to rest up players. I think that Saquon Barkley is going to not play, and they're going to get focused, and they're going to be in playoff mode. Devontae Smith had 6 receptions for 120 yards and 2 scores on the day, and he just definitely seemed like he couldn't miss. And it was just exciting to see how well he played against the Dallas Cowboy team, though. I mean, the score was 41-7. So I don't even want to even contemplate or even talk about that any longer. This was the game that surprised me this week, and it was the New York Giants against the Indianapolis Colts. I thought this was going to be probably one of the worst games, and it was one of the better games, you know. So, regardless of all the stacked games that I didn't think was going to really be worth watching, I was surprised in this one because the New York Giants had fight. Only problem is them winning that game might have hurt them more than it did help them because I believe after winning that game and New England losing, they got the number 1 overall draft pick. Drew Lock, man, he basically said that he belonged. He might not be a starter, but he will still be a backup, if not in New York, somewhere else, because he definitely made him a good payday. He had 309 yards and 4 touchdowns in this game. Malik Neighbors had 7 receptions for 171 yards and 2 scores, and he definitely was one of the better rookies. And it's crazy because the 2 LSU guys was looking phenomenal in the NFL, and they definitely are 2 good rookies, and they made their teams look very exciting. The only difference is it ain't really too much of a difference because Jacksonville didn't play well this year in New York. So they definitely going to need more help. And I believe, unfortunately, I like Trevor Lawrence, but I think they need to move on and figure out what they're going to do at quarterback. And especially the New York Giants, too, as well. Maybe Drew Lock might still be able to be a backup, but I don't know if he'll stay in New York. But yeah, they definitely need to do something because the Daniel Jones experience definitely sputtered. It didn't work out, and it got ugly in the season. Joe Flacco definitely has been pretty inconsistent himself this year. He had 330 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Jonathan Taylor had 125 yards on the ground and 2 scores. I was more or less surprised with Alec Pierce's performance because he's been looking pretty sharp these last few weeks. He had 6 receptions for 122 yards and a touchdown. What I liked about this game was the Colts was getting beat down really bad. They ended up making it close to tying the game. I think that they couldn't convert on a 2 point conversion. And after that happened, it was like New York just ran away with it. That final score was 45-33 in a very good contested matchup. The Dolphins and Cleveland Browns was just a really bad game to me. Tyler Huntley had 225 yards and a touchdown through the air, 52 yards in the score on the ground, and Tyreek Hill had 9 receptions for 105 yards, and Dorian Thompson Robinson had 170. He had 170 yards, and he had a pick on the day. And with that field goal, that made it to the point where it helped them not get blown out in garbage time. And that final score was 20-3. I'm going to move on from that one. This is the game that hurt me the most right here. I was definitely disappointed in this one. This one was the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings game. They always seem like they get close and seem like they give me a bit of life and a little bit of hope, and then they spit in my face every time. Green Bay, we needed you guys so we could rest after a win, but you couldn't even do that for us. So thanks a lot, Green Bay. It seemed like they always let us down when we need them. Jordan Love had 185 yards in the score. Josh Jacob had 69 yards to score, and he fumbled on the day. How do I know? Because he's on my fantasy team. Thanks a lot. Sam Darnold, on the other hand, was really sharp. He had 377 yards to touch. He had 3 touchdowns, and he had a pick on the day. It wasn't really much from everybody else. I just feel like in this game, Sam Darnold threw the ball and he threw it to whoever was open. And Jordan Addison usually was the person of that or the recipient of his open, scoring. Justin Jefferson looked pretty good, but I knew they wasn't going to let Justin Jefferson beat them. He had 8 receptions for 92 yards, and that final score was definitely it left a bad taste in my mouth, 27-25, and Green Bay comeback definitely was not going to materialize. So Thanks for getting my hopes up high. The Falcons and the Commanders was a really good game. You had two young, great rookie quarterbacks. Jayden Daniels, who I think is going to be the rookie of the year, and you have Michael Penix, who definitely showed that he needs to be the starting quarterback in Atlanta. Sorry, Kirk Cousins. Maybe it'll be somewhere for you to go. It's a lot of quarterback needy teams who might not want to go with this lackluster draft. You only really have a good three solid quarterbacks, give or take in this draft. It's a pretty weak quarterback draft. So I feel like Kirk Cousins is going to fill the void on some other team. Michael Penix had 223 yards, a touchdown, and he had a pick on the day. Bijan Robinson had 90 yards and two scores, and Drake London had seven receptions for 106 yards. Jaden Daniels had 227 yards, three touchdowns, and a pick on the day. And Jaden Daniels had 16 carries for 127 yards. That dude is deadly. I thought that him being small like he was, even though he was a Heisman Trophy winner, I definitely felt like he needed to bulk up because he was going to get injured. He got a little shooken up and missed a game or so this season, but his body's been holding up in the NFL, and he's been a really good pro. Like I said, rookie of the year. Olamide Zacchaeus. Man, that's a hard name to say. He had 85 yards in the score as well, but I just feel like Jane Daniels, man, he's just a phenomenal player to watch. He reminds me so much of RG3 in his prime, and I just pray that he can stay upright and stay healthy in his career. That final score was it went to overtime, and it was 30-24. The Commanders move on. Okay, I had to say the best for last, and I'm glad. The Lions versus the San Francisco 49ers. And I heard all the junk you was talking about, man. I heard that noise. And I definitely felt like when our coach Dan Campbell said that he was going to bring a lot of people to the West Coast, I don't think that they took exceptions to that. And one of the players, I'm not going to say his name, I'm going to leave him anonymous, and he was like, well, Fred Warner. He was like, why you bringing on them people here to get your ass kicked? I said, okay, let's see what they talking about now, man. Hopefully now that, that give us the bulletin material and the bullet board material to, embarrass San Francisco, because I want to embarrass them and I want to beat them bad. But at the beginning of the game, we came out very sluggish. It was 14 to, actually it was 6-7, and then San Francisco scored. But whenever we scored, they scored, and it was just like a battle of who wanted it more. They couldn't stop us on defense, and we couldn't stop them on defense. The good part about it was when it came down to it at the end of the day, we got two stops from Joseph Kirby, and we sealed the deal. It was redemption from last year because I felt like we had opportunity to make it to the Super Bowl, and I just felt like some decision making wasn't too happy about it. But I know my coach, and he gonna do what he feel like was best for the team. But I just felt like if we just sat on it and kicked the field goals like we did in this game, it would have been a possibility. It would have been a different story. Who knows? But I don't want to dwell on the past. I just like that redemption game right here, and that definitely left. Me in good spirits after this game because I was upset the whole game and didn't really want to finish watching it. But I went ahead, gutted it out, and at the end of the day, the final score was for 40-34. Lions won. We're 14-2, and we're going to go up against the 14-2 Minnesota Vikings next week for it all. Whoever wins this get the number one seed, and they get the rest of their players. And I think nobody needed more than we do. Jared Goff had 303 yards and three touchdowns. Jameer Gibbs looked good without, our boy Knuckles right now. David Montgomery, he had 18 carries, 117 yards and score. And J-Mo Williams had five receptions, 77 yards and the touchdown. And then he had one on the ground where he walked in on both of them. That was just who J-Mo is. Brock Purdy looked pretty solid at first until he didn't with the two picks. He had 337 yards, three touchdowns. And what I was surprised about was Ricky Pearsall, man. He really looked good, man. I was like, he was almost looking like a smaller version of George Kittle when George Kittle gets off. He had eight receptions for 141 yards, and he had to score on the day. But at the end of the day, we prevailed, and I was definitely glad. That was a game that I felt like we needed to keep our confidence up. And then I'm about to talk about the games now, and I'm about to do my lightning round into next week's games. It's not really a lot of games that have a lot of importance to me going into week 18. Most of everything is sealed up, but our game is very important, and I will be talking about that game very last. The Browns and the Baltimore Ravens, I'm going to go with the Ravens, and I'm going to go with the 19 and a half points. The Bengals and Steelers, I'll take the 2.5. Cincinnati. Texans and Titans, I'm actually going with the Tennessee Titans in this one, and I'll give them the half points. I feel like why not? Texans are in; they don't have really much to play for. They might play. If they do, I'll say the Texans by maybe 3, but I believe they're going to rest their players too. And I'm gonna give this game to the Tennessee Titans. I'm gonna stick with that. Panthers and the Falcons. I'm gonna go with the Atlanta Falcons. I'll take the 7.5 points. Saints and the Buccaneers. Come on now. I'm gonna go with the Buccaneers with the 13 and a half. I'm actually going with Buffalo with 2.5 on this one because it's a possibility by them sealing the number 2 seed, and I don't think they want to bang up or hurt their players and kind of rest the players. I would go with them by the 2.5. Jaguars and Colts, I'm gonna go with Indiana, and I'm gonna go with the 5 points. I'm gonna go with the Commanders versus the Cowboys with the 6 points. The Giants and the Eagles, I'm gonna actually go with the Eagles with 1.5 because like I said, the Eagles are gonna rest AJ Brown, they're gonna rest Saquon Barkley, and I believe they're gonna continue to rest Jalen Hurts so he won't get injured. The Bears and the Packers, I'm gonna go with Green Bay with this one because I feel like they still got to determine if they're going to be the 6 or 7 seed, and I think them winning will keep them at the 6 seed, and I would take them with the 10 points. Seattle and the Rams, I will take Seattle because I don't think the Rams need to play for anything, and I'll take them with the 6.5. Dolphins and the Jets. The Dolphins still have a little bit to play for because if they win and they can get a little help, they can be in. I would take them by the 1 point though, the 1 point spread. I have Kansas City losing by 10.5 because, like I said, I bet you Patrick Mahomes, Kareem Hunt, Travis Kelsey, and a lot of those guys are not going to play in that game. They don't have nothing to prove. They're already the number 1 seed. Chargers and Raiders, I'm going to go with the Los Angeles Chargers, and I'll take the 4 points. The 49ers and the Cardinals, I will definitely take the Cardinals in this one, and I'll take them by the 4.5. And I had to save the best for last because this is the battle for it all for the number 1 seed and to buy the rest of their players. It's the Detroit Lions versus the Minnesota Vikings. I know we're banged up, but I just feel like that Detroit pride is going to come in there and they're going to play. Regardless of the fact win or lose, I still got love for my team, and I still feel like they're going to persevere in this game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. The first game when they beat Minnesota, it was by 3. I still feel like it's going to be by 3 this time on the last minute field goal. I definitely like this game right here. It is 14-2. I really would. I wish that we could have got some help, but unfortunately, it didn't happen that way. But hey, I feel like we got to seal our own destiny. What's a better way to do it in the last game of the season? I'm gonna pick a funky score, and I'm gonna go with 32-35 Detroit Lions. That's all my predictions and all my picks. And like I said, Tuesday, I'm going to do a special edition where I do all the stats of the year and breaking down everything what happened in 2024, 2025 and give you the stats and the things that'll go along with it. It's going to be my X's and O's edition of the Guru Perspective. I would like to say, check me out on, Instagram is Hoovy. I put up all the reels of the show after I'm finished doing the Guru Perspective. You can check me out on Facebook. I'm Sports Guru to you. I put all my sports and breaking news on there. TikTok, I put all my highlight reels and all the exciting reels from NBA, NFL, WNBA, etc. And that's Hugh.Lee6. You can catch me every Tuesday at 1 p.m. on the Guru Perspective. Today I had to do a special edition on Friday because a lot of things materialized. It was New Year's and New Year's Eve, and I didn't want to do a show then. So yeah, I moved it and made it a special show on Friday. But then you could catch me every Wednesday as well on the Guru's sports session. And that would be every Wednesday at 9 p.m. as well. Thank you all. Happy New Year. Like and subscribe on Facebook. I appreciate all the love and support you guys are already giving me. And I would like to say thank you guys. I appreciate you, love you all. And I couldn't be any more happier to you guys making my dream a reality. Love you all. Have a blessed and happy new year and peace until the next episode.